this printable pattern available on my website. So you could cut this out and use this as your template for your felt. I also do have a baby shoe size chart. So if you'd like to make a different size, all I would recommend for that is just a tape measure so that you could change the size of the shoe. So first I'm just gonna get started by cutting out my template for my baby shoes. So once I have my template cut out, I'm just gonna take my felt. I'm just gonna lightly mark on the felt the shapes that I need to cut out. Once you have everything lightly traced, I'm just going to begin cutting out my shapes. So once you have all of your felt pieces cut out, the next thing I'm going to do is cut fringe into the long strips of the felt pieces. So basically you're not going to want to cut all the way through, obviously, but just you want to cut up so that there's about 2 centimeters before you reach the top, and you could cut however thick or however thin you want your fringe to be. So next, to begin pinning everything together, you're just going to want to take one of your soles, and the back of the sole is going to be a tiny bit more narrow than the front of it, so just keep that in mind. We're going to begin pinning the back to the front. So basically you're going to want to have the straightaway part on the very top and then the rounded parts towards the bottom. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to fold that in half to figure out where roughly the middle is on that point. So I'm just going to hold that with my finger, open it back up, place it on the narrow part of the sole, and I'm just going to pin that together. So then what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to bring the front flaps forward. So let's say this is the right shoe. You're going to want the left side to go first and then the right side to go over it. So then I'm going to pin that front together, making sure that the bottom of the sole and the 2 sides are evenly lined up. So once you have that pinned together, we're just going to bring the sides in and pin both sides. So I'm just going to make sure that the sides line up and then just place a pin there as well. So then you should roughly have what your little moccasin is going to look like. So what I like to do is I like to sew the bottom on first, and then I'm going to attach the fringe on after. Take whatever thread that you chose to use, and you're going to want to spool out quite a bit of length because you don't want to run out of thread and then have to rethread it and have a knot somewhere other than the back of the shoe. So just keep that in mind. So I'm just going to go ahead and thread my needle, and what I'm going to do for this is tie the 2 ends together. So I'm going to line up the 2 sides and make a knot together just so that the thread is a little bit thicker and you'll see the color more and it makes it more sturdy. So to get started with the sewing portion, I am going to start along the back. So you can go ahead and remove the pin that's connecting the back together. So we're going to start holding the shoe facing us. So I'm going to start by placing the first thread from the bottom going up, and you're going to want to leave about 1 centimeter or 2 space in between the bottom and where you're pulling your needle up. So I'm just going to be repeating that process. The only other thing to keep in mind when you're making your stitches is if you would like to create the little line of thread along the top and the bottom, it just adds a little bit more detail. What you're going to want to do with that is when you pull up your thread, so I'm going to go through the very next spot. So you're going to want to pull the thread over towards the side that is unworked, around the needle like that, and then back down. And then when you pull it through, you'll leave a little line of thread over the side of the work. So I'm just gonna go ahead and continue doing that pattern, wrapping the thread around the needle before I pull it through. So I'm just gonna work my way down the moccasin, doing my best to keep the thread the same distance away from the bottom and the sides. You can see I'm just removing the pins as I go along. When you reach the front portion of the moccasin, you want to just double check that everything is lined up. And I found that it works best when you make the stitches a little bit closer together when you make the turn so that it doesn't bubble up. So now I've made my way all the way back around, and you will notice that the first few stitches that you've made won't have the little lining because it just takes a few stitches to get started. So I'm just going to go ahead and continue until a few stitches in, just so that it'll look uniform throughout the whole bottom of the shoe. So now that looks good. I'm just going to cut and make a small knot and then cut the excess off. And then you're finished with the bottom portion. So now I'm just going to go ahead and get started on sewing on the fringe. So basically you're just going to want to line it up to the back and then wrap it around evenly towards the front. I'm just going to place a small pin just to hold that in place, and one on the other side as well. So then you just get started on one side, remove one of the pins, start from the inside out, the same way that we connected the bottom of the moccasin together. So then again, I'm just going to be taking the back of the thread that's connected to the needle and wrap it around towards the side that you have not worked yet. And then just continue doing that, keeping it roughly the same spacing away from the edge and from the other point that you just made. So now that I've made my way all the way back around from the top of the moccasin, I'm just going to place my needle going through the inside, and then that's where I'm going to cut and tie. So I'm just going to make a small knot on the inside and then cut off the excess string. Then you could kind of just tuck the knots into the inside. The only other thing that's optional for finishing off the shoe is you could add a little tiny band of elastic on the inside and then just place two little stitches on either side just to make it stretchy and a little bit more durable. I unfortunately don't have any elastic, but if you would like to do that, that is optional. But that's basically it. The only other thing that I would want to let you guys know is that when you're sewing the other moccasin together, just keep in mind that the way that you fold over the felt, the back of the felt, will be different. So this is the right shoe, and then to make the left shoe, you just fold it the opposite way. So the left shoe, the right side goes first, and then the left side goes next, just so that you have the flaps facing in the same direction for each shoe. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. If you have any other requests, suggestions, if you have any questions, please leave them down below. I will do my best to answer them. But yeah, so I hope you guys enjoy this tutorial, and I will see you in my next video.